Summary of Journey's End by R.C. Sherriff. In the first scene of Journey's End, Osborne lands in the British lines at St. Quentin, France, in the last year of World War I. He is the second in command of a group of infantrymen who are stationed just 70 yards from the German lines. Since this kind of military service is very hard, the infantry takes turns working at this site, with each group working for 6 days. When Osborne gets there, he has a short talk with Hardy, who is second in command and just finished his 6 days. Hardy tells Osborne that the Germans are likely to attack soon, and the two troops talk about the army captain, Stanhope. Stanhope is a young man who drinks a lot and has been in the war for 3 years already. Stanhope is praised by Hardy for being both a good boss and a big drinker. Hardy also tells Osborne about an officer who just quit, and he says that he hopes the new soldier will be a better and stronger one. When Hardy goes, Osborne sits down to a meal made by Mason, who is the cook for the officers. Here, Raleigh, the new cop, walks in. Raleigh tells Osborne that he knew Stanhope before the war when they are talking. He and Stanhope went to the same high school, and Stanhope's father was friends with Raleigh's father. Stanhope was a recognized rugby player. During the summers, the boys hung out together, and Stanhope started going out with Raleigh's sister. When Stanhope went to war, Raleigh thought about him as a brave captain all the time. When Raleigh joined the army, he asked a family member to help him join Stanhope's troops. When Osborne hears this, he knows that he needs to tell Raleigh that Stanhope has changed. Next, the two men talk about Raleigh's trip through the ditches to the front lines, which he says was very quiet. Even though it is one of the most dangerous places to be stationed, Osborne says that it is often quiet there. Osborne says that they are just waiting for something to happen. Stanhope is shocked to see Raleigh when he walks into the bench. Instead of giving him a hug, he just asks him how he got there. Then he talks to Osborne and another cop named Trotter, and everyone sits down to eat. Hibbert, the fourth officer of Stanhope's troops, comes in and says that his neuralgia makes him not sure if he can eat. Stanhope is upset by this, so he tells Hibbert to eat, but Hibbert goes to bed instead. Stanhope says, "There's another little worm trying to get home." Trotter decides to make a chart of the hours left until he and the other officers can leave the ditches while they are eating dinner. He draws 144 circles on a piece of paper and plans to fill them in as the hours go by. When dinner is over, only Stanhope and Osborne are left in the pit. Stanhope is very drunk. He says that he's afraid Raleigh will write to his sister, who is waiting for Stanhope to come back, and tell her about his drinking. Stanhope says he's going to edit Raleigh's letters, and Osborne puts his drunk friend to bed. The next day, the colonel tells Stanhope that the long-awaited German attack will happen on March 21st, just 2 days from now. Stanhope tells Osborne about this, and Osborne says he's glad that something is finally happening. Stanhope then thinks about what he saw and did in the trenches and worries that he might be going crazy. Osborne tells him that all he's feeling is nerve strain. Raleigh comes into the bench with a letter, and Stanhope tells him to leave it open so it can be edited. Raleigh says he hasn't said anything secret, but Stanhope is angry and tells him to do what he's told and let his letter be edited. When Raleigh leaves, Stanhope asks Osborne to read the letter, only to find that the boy has only said good things about him. Later that afternoon, the colonel tells Stanhope that the higher-ups have chosen to do a raid on the German lines before the attack on the 21st. Stanhope thinks this sounds like a suicide mission, but the colonel argues that it must be done. The two men decide that Osborne and Raleigh should be in charge of the task. Hibbert goes into the bench after the colonel leaves and tells Stanhope that his neuralgia has gotten so bad that he thinks he has to go home. This makes Stanhope angry, so he tries to convince him to stay and even pulls a gun on him, but doesn't shoot. Last but not least, Hibbert shows that he doesn't really have neuralgia. He actually can't stand the fight. Stanhope shows that he cares more when he tells Hibbert that he feels the same way. He says that drinking is the only thing that keeps him from pretending to be sick and going home. The next day, the colonel and Stanhope talk about the raid's plan. Osborne and his men will throw a smoke bomb at a piece of German fence, as described by the Colonel and Stanhope. Raleigh and his men will sneak through the fence, grab the first German soldier they see, and hold him as a hostage so they can find out more about the attack. The Colonel and Stanhope then went to see Osborne and Raleigh, who were getting ready for the task. When they leave, Osborne and Raleigh sit at a table and try to pass the time until the game starts. At some point, they talk about Raleigh's hometown. In the last few minutes they have together, they keep getting closer. The raid works, and they take a young German soldier hostage. This makes the Colonel happy, but Stanhope soon finds out that Osborne has died. Raleigh is shocked by the loss, just like Stanhope, but it's hard for the Colonel to show it because he's mostly excited to tell everyone about the mission's success. When the Colonel finally leaves, Stanhope and Raleigh look at each other as gunshots sounds in the distance. That night, as a treat, the Colonel and other officials give champagne to Stanhope, Trotter, and Hibbert, who get drunk on it. Hibbert drinks more than he usually does and tells Stanhope that Raleigh can't join them because he's keeping watch over the soldiers. This makes Stanhope angry, and when Raleigh comes into the dugout, he asks him why he would eat with the sergeants instead of the officers. Raleigh says he couldn't picture eating and drinking on the day Osborne died. When he asks Stanhope how he can do this, Stanhope yells, "To forget. You think that a man can handle anything?" The next morning, when the German attack starts, the officers are still drunk. Stanhope and Hibbert are in the bench, and Hibbert is trying to stay there as long as possible. Stanhope gets him into the ditches in the end, but he stays behind. Soon, Raleigh gets hurt and needs to be taken to the bench. He is so shocked at first that he doesn't realize how badly he's been hurt. Soon after, though, he sees he can't move his legs, so he starts calling Stanhope Dennis. Stanhope, in turn, calls him Jimmy and says he'll stick with him. When Stanhope goes to get a light, Raleigh has already stopped talking. Stanhope walks in, and a soldier tells him that Trotter wants him to join them in the ditches. Stanhope looks at Raleigh's dead body and then climbs the dugout steps. A few seconds later, a shell goes off close, putting out the light next to Raleigh.
About the author. Robert Cedric Sherriff was born in 1896 in the Middlesex town of Hampton Wick. After he finished school in 1914, he worked as a clerk in his father's insurance office until World War I. Sherriff was in the East Surrey Regiment and fought in many important fights until 1917, when he was hurt. At this point, he went back to his first job as an insurance assessor, which he did for 10 years. During this time, he started writing plays. His most popular and well-known work, Journey's End, is based on his events during the war. When it opened in 1928, Journey's End got a lot of good reviews and ran for a long time in London. After this success, Sherriff went to New College, Oxford, where he joined the Royal Society of Literature and the Society of Antiquaries of London in his early 30s. During his life, he wrote 18 original plays, 15 screenplays for movies, and even a few books.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.